Council meeting in order. Please rise for the prayer and pledge of allegiance. Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and glory, forever and ever. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, item D on the agenda is approval of minutes from February 7th, 2022, regular council meeting. In the absence of any objections or corrections, the minutes shall stand approved. Okay, they stand approved. All right, item E, citizen communication. If there's anyone in the audience or on WebEx that would like to address council with anything that is not on the agenda, you can do so by using the chat. Item F, reports from council committees. F1 is electric committee met on February 14th. Lori?
Thank you, Council President. We recommended to move forward with AMP-CT redetermination and appropriation of funds, and also approved BOPA recommendation to choose option 7 for industrial substation rebuild.
Thank you. F2, water, sewer, refuse, recycling, and litter committee did not meet on February 14th due to lack of agenda items. And F3, the municipal property, building, land use, and economic development committee met on February 14th. Molly?
Thank you. We did not take any action on the appeals of the city engineering rule 4.1.3. We referred to a committee the review of the engineering rules, and we also reviewed the options for the Ritter Park Path project and Front Street project.
All right, thank you. Item F4, the Parks and Rec committee did not meet earlier tonight due to lack of agenda items. Moving on to item H, introductions of new ordinances and resolution. H1 is ordinance number 007-22. An ordinance approving current December 2021 replacement pages to the City of Napoleon codified ordinances. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion. Oh, second.
You guys are gonna do that all night. All right, Joel.
Thank you, Council President. This is something that we do twice a year, so the replacement pages are done by the Walter Drain Company. Actually, I think it's a different company name now, but it's the same company. Billy, I don't know if you have any.
The one thing I was looking for was there were some amendments in, was it HB 172 regarding fireworks rules on the state level that will at some point affect municipal ordinances. In reading further and checking in to see with Walter Drain to see where we were at and what was being considered, it looks like a lot of the rulemaking authority was given to, if I recall, I think it was the fire marshal, the state fire marshal. So, and those rules from the fire marshal are not due until July. There's nothing really to change at this point for our fireworks rules. That was something that I saw that coming, and I was a little worried that they would, the state legislature likes to make very big changes regarding certain things that may or may not be dangerous. So thought that it would be good to get out ahead of that one. And it looks like we don't need to do anything yet, but at some point after we review the new rules from the fire marshal, we may have to change our ordinances. I'm not sure. But for now, that was something that I had brought up previously. That's why I'm bringing it up now. So nothing to do as far as that goes. But the rest of the amendments are all, everything seems to be in order.
I think I read something on that it takes effect on July 1st.
So it's sort of piecemeal. There were portions that took effect on February 7 of this year, but none of those affect us at this point. And then there were, so there are some others that will take effect on July 1. And those are the ones I'm kind of watching to see what happens, just in case we need to amend our fireworks ordinances.
Great. All right, thank you. Any questions or concerns? Okay, hearing none, Rox, please call the roll.
Ken?
Yes.
Dr. Cordis?
Yes.
Molly?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Okay, that will be moving on to second read. Item I is second readings of ordinances and resolutions. I-1 is ordinance number 005-22, an ordinance amending certain City of Napoleon traffic schedules, specifically Schedule I, on street parking prohibited on certain streets, and Schedule 3, stop and yield intersections, as listed in the attached Exhibit A, and repealing ordinance number 030-19 and declaring an emergency. Good motion?
I'll motion.
Second.
Okay. Joel?
Thank you. Just requesting second read. This is for the changes to the parking ordinance to allow parking on the north side of Front Street. Angled parking in front of Trigen, parallel parking in front of the winery, and Chad identified a few other cleanup items that needed to be fixed, so those are added in here too.
Any questions or comments regarding this? Okay, hearing none, Rox, please call the roll.
Ken?
Yes.
Dr. Cordis?
Yes.
Molly?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Okay, moving on to item I-2, resolution number 008-22, a resolution authorizing the participation in Ohio Department of Transportation, ODOT Cooperative Purchase Program, and declaring an emergency.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, Joel?
Thank you. This is a requirement for ODOT for us to be participant in their crack sealing program, so requesting second read.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Okay, Rox, please call the roll.
Ken?
Yes.
Dr. Cordis?
Yeah.
Molly?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
All right, moving on to item J, third readings of ordinances and resolutions. J1 is ordinance, or resolution number 004-22, a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute the Housing Revolving Loan Fund Administration Agreement between the State of Ohio Development Services Agency and the City of Napoleon, and declaring an emergency.
Motion.
Second.
Joel?
Nothing new to report on this.
Any new questions or concerns? Rox, please call the roll.
Ken?
Yes.
Dr. Cordis?
Yes.
Molly?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Okay, that has passed on third read. All right. Moving on to item K, good of the city. K1, discussion or action, approval of power supply cost adjustment factor for February 2022 as PSCA 3-month average factor 0.01706 and JV2 0.223542. Joel?
Thank you. There is one thing of note in this month's power supply cost adjustment factor, is that we received an additional $344,986.22. This was received as a sale of renewable energy certificates from the JV5 project. It was lumped into the bill, but we pulled it out and put it into the electric development fund, since this was an influx. Usually when there's a sale of something, it goes into the electric development fund and not incorporated into the bill. So the power supply cost adjustment factor reflects, the 0.01706 reflects actual usage rather than an artificial lowering of that power supply cost adjustment factor for this 1 month. Typically, when there is a sale of something, it goes into the electric development fund, whether it be RECs or, you know, something that we get back. So that was the reason why. That's the 4 stars at the bottom here, explanation for the December 21, this month's power supply cost adjustment factor, so.
Do you know if AMP plans on doing it this way always in the future, or have you
You know,
talked to them about it?
usually we get a separate check.
Right.
So I don't know why that was done in this manner, but, that, you know, it was, that's how it was handled this time, so, might have just been easier for them to incorporate it into the bill and not write separate checks for everybody, for all the participants. I'm not really sure, but.
Okay. All right, well,
So-
I guess we can
It
always
was-
ask
and it-
them.
And it's noted on there pretty clear in the front of the bill, so I mean,
Right.
it's right here, this added miscellaneous charge right here that was deducted off of the normal bill amount.
Okay.
May I ask a
Mhm.
question? This is JV5, the windmills?
JV5 is Belleville hydroelectric plant and peaking units. So it's kind of like a package deal. So there are some diesel generators and gas turbines mixed in. But the RECs obviously come from the sale of from the water plant, or the hydro plant.
Right. That won't affect us at this time, to not have that in our portfolio any longer?
Oh, it's in there. It's renewable energy credits, when sold, means that the owner of that facility cannot claim the green power because the renewable energy credits for that, the certificates for that, are being sold off. That's something new that came out. So, because if you own it and sell the RECs, yes, you've invested in that renewable energy resource, but you're also getting back sort of a refund. In other words, they don't want to double count those
Right.
credits towards one person's, the ownership's portfolio versus whoever's buying the credits, if that makes sense. So there's no requirement now, but if there is ever a mandate of some sort, some unfunded federal mandate in the future, or even a state mandate, you know, these projects come into play and these credits come into play at that point. So for now, the participants, and it's weird, every project contract is set up a little different, but, you know, for now, the renewable energy credits are just sold, and, you know, we reap that back. We get the money back when they sell, and then apply it to either, you know, project improvements, system improvements, or incorporate it into the rates. That depends on what contract it is. I think the RECs for the solar field actually just roll back into the project.
Mhm.
Where JV5 is obviously handled a little differently.
I wondered if we put that against the future debt for the water generator, the water turbines.
The hydros.
Hydro, thank you.
Since those are bonded projects, and
There would be
I've-
no advantage to paying it off early?
well, we could, but they're bonded projects, so we're kind of locked into
It's
We're-
it's something separate account, we can't mix.
we're locked into that long-term debt.
Okay.
The 344 and change, is that for 6 months, a month, 2 years, 5 days?
You know, that, our proportionate share, that to me seems like it's a year, but I gotta find
Okay.
out exactly how many months.
I would
that
guess
goes.
2 it's a year because it doesn't show up on a bill very often, but,
Right.
okay.
This is the first time I've seen it billed like this, so I'm
The-
wondering if they just changed the process and,
The hydro plants, Joel, help me out. They're all on the Kentucky side of the Ohio River, or are they on both sides of the Ohio River?
they are on, I believe they're on both sides.
Okay.
But one of them, one of them is far up, Belleville's farther upstream. The other ones are more downstream, Smith, the new ones, I believe, are all on the Kentucky side.
Okay. Because you talk about
The
state
three new
legislators, we got to worry about
Yeah,
the great state of Ohio, the Commonwealth of Kentucky?
well,
Combination
thankfully,
thereof?
thankfully, it's not Illinois,
Right,
so
right.
that's the one that, I think the West Virginia side and the
Okay.
Ohio and Kentucky sides were in Indiana. Actually don't think there's any on the Indiana side, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, we need a motion to approve the power supply cost adjustment.
Motion?
Second.
Hey, Rox, please call the roll.
John?
Yes.
Dr. Porter?
Yes.
Molly?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Okay, that has been approved. Item K2, discussion or action on recommendation to move forward with AMP CT re-termination and appropriation of funds. Joel?
Thank you, Council President. Okay, so, in the electric committee meeting and the Board of Public Affairs, we talked about the AMP transmission project for the rebuild of the industrial substation. That transaction has taken place, and since then, we've been planning the rebuild in conjunction with AMP transmission, because there are certain things that we have to do on our distribution side, and there are certain things that they have to rebuild on the transmission side. So, in working with them, we've been planning and coordinating this. It is rather complicated, but this is the one-line drawing of how it exists today. This is an aerial view. I'm gonna pass through some of these and get to the options here. Where we left it off was option 4 and option 7. And option 4 was the cheaper of the two options, but would not allow for a future transaction to take place for the remainder of the system, including Southside and Glenwood substations. And then option 7 was to just do the construction of the substation now to allow for that transaction to take place. So, and it's a little pricier. So, this kind of goes through the options for, if we're segmenting or sequencing construction. And then option 7, there's a comparison, and then getting to the bottom line. If you look at this middle line, the $800,000 piece, that has to happen anyway. And that's what we're talking about here, was the keeping the behind-the-meter generation behind the meter. Because those AMP CTs cannot directly put power back, because when they're running, they run more energy than what our system actually uses. So, at a peak time. So, power is actually going back out on the grid. It can't go back out directly. It has to be separated off on its own breaker, and kind of measured and controlled that way. So, the AMP CT re-termination, regardless of what happens with option 4 and option 7, it has to happen. This isn't something that we budgeted for, because at the time when we were planning this, we didn't know when we were going to get into the sequencing of this. But this is something that has to happen first. So the recommendation was to move forward with this. And what would have to happen is funding would have to be appropriated for it. So through council, and then we could move forward. I do want to point out that there is a piece here that was kind of left out of the discussion the last time. One of the breakers in the substation was not sold to AMP Transmission, because it couldn't yet, because this re-termination of the AMP-CT line had to happen first. So the net book value right now is about $350,000 for that. So after that re-termination would happen, then that transaction could take place for that breaker number 3, or IS number 3. So that line was added in to show that that transaction would happen at a later date, thus bringing down the 4.6 to 4.67 to about 4.3, or, and I'm just looking at the Napoleon cost, 2.9 to 2.6. Or 2.55. So, other than that, we'll get into the next recommendation that came out of the committee after this one, but for now, we were talking about either waiting to appropriate this till first quarter budget adjustments, or it could be handled as a separate standalone piece of legislation. But by the time you do 3 reads, we're already at the point of when first quarter budget adjustments happen, so that's kind of what we were thinking on when we would seek council approval for the appropriation of the funds necessary to complete the AMP-CT re-termination. So,
I have a few questions for you. When we first started talking about replacing these, it's probably been, 2.5, 3 years ago?
yeah. Yep.
And that was prior to us even considering selling a portion of it. So I apologize, my memory isn't great. And I didn't get a chance to kind of look back at all of these. So I'm going to ask you some questions now that you may not have on the top of your head. But so originally, were we going to replace all 3 of them ourselves?
The substations?
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay.
All 3 substations are at or approaching end of life right now.
And for some reason, in my head, I remember it was going to be about like $18 million. Does that sound about right, or was that for 2 of them?
No, it was south of that. We're probably about $10 million estimate
For all 3?
for all 3. Yeah,
Okay.
at the time.
Right.
At the time, that was the price then.
Okay.
And I say that now because back then, back then to now, we've seen, and we've talked about this in the electric committee meeting, we've seen the price of transformers double.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the priciest components that we're gonna have are the big transformers in the substations.
So that when we started talking about selling the substations, I guess I was remembering or thinking that we were gonna sell them as is,
Mm-hmm.
and then AMP Transmission would do all of the repairs or, the new one,
Yep,
and we would save the 100% of what we were gonna put into it. I understand option 7 where we have to do some things on our own. So I guess I'm just asking if it's gonna cost us roughly around 2.55 on option 4.
Mhm.
How much would it have cost us if we didn't sell to AMP?
well,
It would have been the full 65.
no, it would actually be, because IS3 wouldn't be sold either.
Right.
So it'd be 2.9 plus, I think this is high, if we were just to rebuild it on our own, I think that's high because they're putting in a ring bus. So to kind of separate off the transmission components from the distribution side. Where if it was all just distribution at that point, then this would be lower. So at the time, we were looking at a total rebuild cost of 3.2 to 3.5 million, somewhere in that range for just industrial. And now that's, I think that number has changed significantly since the last year. So that was the cost directly to the enterprise fund, the electric fund.
Right.
Where in this scenario, whoops, I don't know what's going on here. Okay, it was the end of the slide deck here. There we go. So, and it's hard to say which, when you're looking at both, why is there a 1.7 million in the transmission piece for Napoleon up here? And that's a much more technical question that we'd probably have to have Todd answer. But when you look at this component down here, either this version or this version, where there's a breaker in between here, that's what we're talking about, is that additional expense. And then option 4, you don't have as much component, but it's still there. I mean, it's still there and it's still pricey. So, look, a used breaker, $350,000. New breakers are expensive. These ring buses are expensive. All the components are very expensive, and the transformers are doubled in price. So, everything's kind of going up.
I guess I just was thinking that once we sold to them, then they were taking care of all of it, except for what we need to do on our side. So before we sold it, we were thinking we were gonna pay around 3.5 million for it. And now after we sold it, we're still gonna pay around 2.5 million.
We knew that going into it, and I say that because we cleared $5.1 million. So that was discussed at the time, because we said that there were components that we had to pay for on our end. So it was about 5.1 million. Now, again, the numbers have changed because I think our conditions have changed quite a bit. So, we cleared 5.1 million in the first transaction, and even if going with option 7 is the option, we're still roughly, actually, it's more than 500. That would be about $800,000 ahead. And then with the option to move forward with the remaining part of the system, which either the ratepayers pay for those rebuilds directly, or another transaction takes place and it saves that cost. It's a cost avoidance plus, hopefully, if everything works out, we're banking additional funds. So,
Because that 4.6 will be subtracted from the 5.1. So it is getting done,
Right.
and we'll have a little bit left over to do the rest of the project when we get to it.
And if you remember, the main reason we went into the agreement was to get away from the liability with being a transmission owner. And we would have had to get a few employees, we would have had to have the expense of having the systems all set up, and it wasn't beneficial for us to do that, and that's the reason why we went this direction.
Not this project, right?
Yeah.
That was just north side.
yeah, that was just north side.
Right.
Because-
Okay.
But, yeah, it was just north side.
Okay.
So if we go down the road to sell the other 2 substations, are we gonna have this kind of expense on the other 2 also? Or is this just for industrial?
I think industrial's slightly a little bit more, but, all of the expenses, if you remember, the estimates were around I can't remember, 3.2, 3.5 range. The other substations were in like the 2.6 to 2.8 range for their total rebuilds. So they were slightly less, but that's, forecasting 3 years down the road, trying to do one of these once
Understand.
every 3 years, so.
I think what Councilor Bellerucci is trying to say, and if I'm saying this wrong, help me out. We thought we were getting a big chunk of money, and because it's gonna save us having to spend a lot, but now we sold the asset, we should have spent a lot.
And we were going to spend a
If we
lot.
would not have sold industrial sub, what would have our cost have been had we not done?
We'd have to estimate now to today's costs of what it would be to rebuild it as is, or we would have actually recommended a more reliable version of it.
Okay.
Because in this version, we're actually, it's not going up. So the ring bus, you see the future, this is it's hard to see, but it's a purple breaker. There was also, it calls for an additional potential future transformer for growth potential. Any growth in the industrial area, we are kind of building this for that future growth, so that was factored into it. It's hard to say, I'd have to go back and ask them to take a look at what it would cost today to rebuild the substation as standalone.
How much is AMT spending to rebuild the substation?
They're an option 4, it's 3.5 plus the 350, and then 3.8 plus the 350. So total cost is either 6.4 million or it's 8.4 million. So we always knew that there was going to be an expense on our end, and over $1 million. This was discussed in committee meetings and everything else. So now that we're getting closer to the target date of actually making this happen, these are what the numbers are shaking out to be. It's still a large cost avoidance, and it's still upwards of, almost $1 million in the electric fund in addition to, rather than the $3.5 million expense just out of pocket. So it's still when you total it up, it's at least a $4.3 million savings to the electric fund.
I guess I want to go back and read some of those, because it's been so long ago. From what I was thinking, I remembered was, hey, we either spend the money now, and then if we sold to AMT, we're going to get a lot more money for it because it will be worth more. Or we sell it now as it's appraised, and we don't spend the money because it's going to be theirs. And now it sounds like we're spending quite a bit still, and I know the prices went up. So I just need to go back and read those. I was thinking, once it was out of our hands, we weren't spending the money because it's not ours anymore.
But do we?
It's just the transmission components. There were still some expenses on the distribution side. That was always discussed.
When we
So-
negotiated the assets, though, we negotiated before the inflation. Does that make sense? So we got less for what we sold, and now we have to pay more for what we have to spend because of the situation.
That is not the case.
That's not the case.
Net book value is based on expense of when it's
Okay.
billed. That way you can't build something and then inflation hits and then you can charge the ratepayers more money because it's supposed to depreciate, you're not appreciating your assets. That's how you get recovery for the rates, for the formula rates.
Okay. So if we decide to do another transaction down the road, will those assets be worth more because of all that's going on, or no?
Yep, my understanding is no.
They're
they're still depreciating.
Right.
It's not based on what you can build it for today, it's what you spent on it back then and what the value is. I can't tell you exactly how the formula is, but, because I asked that question, well, with inflation, why don't the assets appreciate in value? And they don't. Not in terms of formula rates.
Right. So I'm not sure what we're supposed to be doing at this moment, but if we're talking about option 7,
Right, we're not yet, that'll be the next one. And the item we're on now is just for that 800,000, right?
Yep.
For the,
determination.
And I would ask that council direct the law director to draft the appropriate legislation in this situation. I would like to look at it a little bit further to determine whether or not it's appropriate to use a budget adjustment for this legislation, or if we should have a standalone. But if you direct me to draft the appropriate legislation, I will bring back the appropriate legislation.
somebody want to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, Rox, please call the roll.
Ken?
Yes.
Dr. Cordis?
Yes.
Molly?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
All right, staying on the same topic here, item K3, discussion or action on recommendation for option 7 for the industrial substation rebuild.
Thank you. So option 7 was the recommendation of the committee based on the discussion that we had because of leaving the option open to move forward with another transaction, which would be the sale of the rest of the 69 kV loop, including the 2 substations. So cost estimates now, we haven't even gotten that far on what that's gonna be at this point. So it's been solely focused on this, and appropriately, because looking back on it, there was a lot of question of, well, why don't we do the whole system? But we stopped here because it put us in a position to make a decision later, but looking back on it, the retermination of that MCT line was really a crux of the whole system that we needed to get addressed, plus the interconnection with the First Energy substation, which is right next to it. So there are a lot of moving parts and complicated components to it, but at the end of the day, leaving it at that first transaction was the right way to go in hindsight. So I know it sounds weird saying that, but you can always second guess a decision, but it was what needed to be done so that the configuration of this substation could get figured out before moving forward with anything else. So yeah, the bottom line is the option 4 is the cheaper of the 2 options. Option 7 is the pricier version of it, but allows for that additional transaction to take place in the future.
And we don't need to act on this one right now, right?
Correct. However, this, what this does is, at this point, we have engineering budgeted for this substation rebuild on our end. So that is $155,000 that's budgeted. And we would go to RFQ, select an engineer, and go through the engineering process, design it so that it fits option 7, which would then need to come back to city council at a later date to move forward with bidding and going through the process for procurement for that rebuild.
Could we do a draft legislation, direct law director, draft legislation for option 4 and for option 7? That way, when it comes to us the next for 3 reads.
It's my understanding that when this legislation will be drafted, it'll be a year or 2 out. When we actually bring the legislation to council, I think what Joel's asking is simply that we move the process forward one direction or the other as budgeted already. I'll let you.
Yeah, I mean, it's, the committee made a recommendation to move forward with the design of, basically, of
Design.
option 7.
So he's looking for approval on this.
Of just the design now?
Yeah, because it's, I mean, that's gonna lock it in, too. I mean, that's, unless we go back and redesign it.
Okay, for engineering
Mr.
twice.
Right, Mr. President.
Yeah.
So if I'm understanding you right, there's a long-term disadvantage to going with option 4.
It depends on how you look at it, but it's gonna cost the city more money, essentially, by not moving forward with the remaining transaction. It's gonna cost the electric fund more money.
Because then the citizens would have to rebuild Glenwood, and Southside on their own dime.
Yep,
Option 7 gives us the ability to sell those two if we want to,
yep,
but not mandatorily, so.
yep.
If we go to sell those two, are we gonna have to redo anything along the lines of any CT retermination or anything along those
That's done,
lines?
that'll all be done.
It's all done.
Yep. There will be components on the distribution side that's not considered transmission that we're gonna be responsible for.
But those may get replaced anyway.
They need to be replaced anyway. And hopefully, I say hopefully, the cost of transaction takes care of the cost of rebuild on our end, and we have money left over that stays in the electric development fund.
Right.
So you're looking for a motion to approve the
that your
recommendation for option 7.
I'll motion.
Second.
Okay, have any other questions or comments regarding this? Okay, Rox, please call the roll.
Ken,
Yes.
Dr. Cordis?
Yes.
Molly,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Okay, moving on to item K4, discussion or action, PC 22-01 subdivision approval, Lot 1, German Mutual subdivision.
So the German Mutual Building, as we all know, sits on a fairly large piece of property, and what they're trying to do is divide it into, as Joel has up on the screen now, the different lots. And where the building actually is actually basically inside Lot 2 right now. But when they renumber them, they're gonna start again, and not called the occupied one, Lot 1. They're gonna start where Lot 1, you can see Lot 1 is on the, between, let's say 11 and 1 o'clock, and then Lot 2 is between 11 and, say, 7, and the other 2 across the bottom. So this allows for potential future commercial growth in this already commercial area. Planning Commission approved it unanimously. It was a fairly short Planning Commission meeting that day.
Can we put a Starbucks on lot 3? That would be great. It's right down the street.
Well, as you know, Billy, we determine what goes on in the
Yes,
city,
please.
right? Yeah. So we determine what goes out and what comes in.
course.
So that's what we do. So you can get a Starbucks built there.
No donuts, though.
No.
We may have more coffee shops and Subways. That'd be good.
We might.
All right, any questions or comments? All right, we need a motion to approve.
I'll motion.
I'll second.
Hey, Rox, please call the roll.
Ken,
Yes.
Cordis,
Yes.
Molly,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross.
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Dan.
Yes.
Okay, item K5, discussion or action award the Ritter Park Boat Ramp Replacement Project.
All right, Chad?
Sure. Yes, last Wednesday, we received bids for the replacement of the boat ramp. Now, the replacement of the ramp is not into the water. It's just a portion of the ramp that is above mean high water mark. The engineer's estimate is $50,000. We received two bids, the low bid being Burke Excavating LLC. As you can see in the memo, there's a large gap between the two bids. Although the Burke Excavating bid is a good bid and seems to be appropriately priced, because of that gap, we have some additional steps we have to follow. And because of those steps I need to follow, and I'm still waiting on paperwork from the contractor, my recommendation is that council make a tentative award to Burke Excavating pending my review of the paperwork. We were expecting to receive that late last week. It hasn't come in yet. We are confident that we will get it, but like I said, I'd like a tentative award until that paperwork is reviewed per the requirements of our bid document.
Have we used Burke Excavating before?
They installed the concrete cart paths at the golf course late last fall, and they've done some private work in town that we've supervised.
And is there a deadline that this has to
Tony
be
set
done?
a deadline of April 1st.
Now, with how cold it can be in March, is that good for
With-
the concrete,
With
or?
concrete, it shouldn't be a problem. The concrete that's required to be installed has to have a specific finish on it that it almost looks like it's corrugated. So because of that finish, if it is cold and we put blankets on it to hold the heat of hydration in, it's not really going to hurt anything. It's not somebody's private driveway where if we rough up the finish a little bit, then it's a problem. In fact, if it is a little rough, it'd probably be better. We just require that contractors use hot water in their mix and cover it with blankets if the temperature's gonna be too cold. Our biggest issue is gonna be just watching the level of the river.
How long of a project is it? 2 days?
I would imagine the removal should be able to be finished in a couple of days. We're putting under drains underneath a part of it to try to keep this, problem from happening again where it's breaking up and washing out the subgrade. It would probably be a couple of weeks. I
Chad,
think they're gonna have to pour it in halves.
If,
Just because of the finish on top, it's gonna be hard to finish that 50 feet across with the attachment on the whole float.
if Burke's Excavating does not submit the proper documentation, council gives a tentative one, you have to come back to council in the first meeting of March to get the next one done?
I don't have another bid we can award.
Okay,
That 85,000 is more than 10% above the engineer's estimate, so we
Right.
are not able to award that one.
okay.
If that would be the case, my recommendation to Tony would be to rebid it in the fall. But Burke Excavating told me they'd have me the paperwork, so
Okay.
hopefully I'll get it in the next day or two.
Very
I
good.
can review it in under an hour,
Understand,
but I have to have it on file.
right.
Anybody else have any questions or comments regarding that? Okay, we need a motion to award.
I'll motion.
Second.
Okay, Rox, please call the roll.
Ken,
Yes.
Cordis,
Yes.
Molly,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Dan.
Yes.
All right, item K6, discussion or action, award the State Route 110 Waterline Connection Project. Chad again?
Yes, sir. Apologize. Last Wednesday, we also opened bids for the State Route 110 Waterline. We received 4 bids. The engineer's estimate on the project was $130,000. Bryan Excavating LLC submitted the lowest bid of $105,820.50. It is my recommendation to award the contract to Bryan Excavating in that amount. So this will allow us to loop in the water system from the dead end line that is currently at the last house on State Route 110 as you're driving out by Campbell's. And it'll allow us to loop that to the new water line that was installed as part of the Industrial Drive River Bridge project.
And we've used Brian for multiple things, haven't we, recently?
Yes, they reorganized, they were previously known as Lingby Excavating. Tom Lingby's been doing work here for over 30 years.
Any questions or concerns? Okay, we need a motion to award.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, Rox, please call the roll.
John,
Yes.
Cordis,
Yes.
Molly,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Dan.
Yes.
Okay, item K7, discussion or action, approval of the city finance director to terminate the agreement between the city of Napoleon and the Central Collection Agency. Kevin?
Thank you, Council President. This is just part of the transition of going to Ritter. We have had a contract with the City of Cleveland and their Central Collection Agency since 2014, where they would do some cross-references of our tax filers. The last time we've used them was back in 2019, where they did work on tax years 16, 17, and 18. And since then, it's just basically set dormant. But we need to officially terminate the agreement before we move over completely to Ritter. According to the contract that we have, or the agreement that we have, is that we need to let them know by July 1st that we'll be terminating the agreement, which becomes effective December 31st. And what I read over is that there's no penalty or cost of withdrawal. So we just need to give them that proper notice.
You know how much we've been paying for this contract now?
Absolutely nothing.
All right.
We don't use
Awesome.
them, it doesn't cost us a thing.
Good.
Yeah.
But termination requires council approval, so.
Okay. So we need a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Hey, Rox, please call the roll.
John,
Yes.
Dr. Cordis,
Yes.
Molly,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Dan.
Yes.
Okay, that's been approved. Item K8, discussion or action, approval to apply for State of Ohio Fire Department Equipment Grant. Chief?
Thank you, Council President. This is a request to, they have an equipment grant for the State Fire Marshal's Office, and you can apply for up to $15,000. So Assistant Chief Fry has that fire extinguisher screen that he's been going around with, and to do fire extinguisher training and things of that nature. That screen is broke, and so with it being broke, we're trying to apply to get this screen replaced in this grant. So that's what this money is for.
All right, thank you. We have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Hey, Rox, please call the roll.
John,
Yes.
Dr. Cordis,
Yes.
Molly,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Dan.
Yes.
All right, that's been approved. We'll go around the table here. Kevin, wanna start us off?
I have nothing to add.
All right. Molly?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay, Lori?
Nothing.
Ross?
Just want to say great job to all of the departments that were involved with the Nights In situation. So thank you guys.
All right, Jason?
Brian, congratulations. It's quite an award there. You're in the top 3
For our division.
for your division. You find out
I think it's in April sometime.
April sometime, pull everybody together in some big room and announce the winner.
Yeah, everybody's in a big room. They announced the winner for like all of them.
Yeah.
All at once.
Is that right? Or, right, some kind of dinner banquet or something, right? Yeah, luncheon, okay. Congratulations, good luck, yeah. Echo what Councilman Durham said about the Nights In. It's amazing to me, it shouldn't be amazing, but it was just such a well-coordinated effort Chief, I know you did a lot of really good background work, a lot of legwork on that to make sure that when the day came, when the time came, that people came out of there, they had a place to go or some place to answer some questions. So, I know that some people still have belongings in there. That's probably part of the investigation. I'm sure there's a timeline of when they can start to get their things out of there, I'm gonna assume.
Right now, we're still under the current court order.
Okay.
It's in the hands of the court at this point.
Okay, all right. And then also, good luck next week at the fire department, police department basketball game. I'm not saying anything, Chief, but, you know, when they redesigned their office, they kept a big place there for trophies. I don't know, it's what I heard. So that's, so. That's all I
You can
have, thanks.
sense my confidence.
It's for a good cause, that's the
Yes,
important
it
part,
is.
yeah.
For the cause.
Yeah, best of luck.
Dan?
Speaking of that basketball game, Chief O'Brien has actually agreed to miss that basketball game, even though we know how well he is as a coach and a player. He's agreed to miss the game for next week's Safety and Human Resources Committee meeting with the townships, which is still on next Monday night, the 28th at 7:30. And thank you for agreeing to miss the game.
It's not a problem.
Duty calls.
It's not a problem.
Okay,
Ken.
that is all.
I
Ken?
have nothing.
All right. Dr. Dave?
Nothing important.
No? Billy?
Is anybody looking for an update on pending litigation? I don't know that it's absolutely necessary, but you know, there are a few items I could share. But it could also wait for 2 weeks as well, so. I'm not gonna ask for it, but if somebody else wants to, that's just fine.
Okay. Thank you. Joel?
Thank you. The strategic planning meeting for safety services continues this week, Wednesday. There's a tour of the police department. And I just want to give a special thank you to Jerry Tonjes for the work that he's done out there, and what he's done for the police department in this whole project that he has going on out there. It's a big deal to them, it's a big deal to all of us, and what he's done has really stretched the city's dollar out. But I did want to at least throw out the opportunity for everybody to tour it when he's done, or maybe even a little sooner. I mean, things are still a little torn apart. I walked through it today, and there's still a lot of cleanup that needs to be done, and a few things that have to happen in the dispatch center yet. So within the next couple of weeks, I'll try to get something on everybody's calendar for like, I know Fridays work good for you. I don't know if there's a day to avoid or not, but I just think it would be good, at least to throw out a time for everybody to have a chance to walk through it and see the changes. So that's number one. Number two, I wanted to mention one thing about one of the things that we discussed earlier, and that was the cost estimates for anything, really, but especially for substation rebuilds. I mean, we're seeing inflation across the board. I think other agencies and other communities are seeing the same thing. So they are just estimates, but you know, we're trying to zero in on all of our numbers and all of our projects. Glad to see that we've had a couple come in under what we budgeted, and we're able to award one of them tentative, one of them award tonight. So still have our eye on that stuff, but everything we purchase, it just seems that, you know, costs are going up. So we're hanging in there. I don't see anything other than transformers right now that in our budget adjustment, but there may be a few other things that we need to make adjustments on in the first quarter. So we're tracking it. It's happening. The last thing is I have a request for an executive session regarding purchase or sale of property.
All right. I just want to echo what everyone else is saying about the nights in. The coordination between all the departments and including the law department, obviously. Billy did a lot of work on that. I know there's some very frustrating times going on with that, so, and then it's nice to see the coordination between the city, the county, all the, I guess, different, yeah, services, yeah. Everybody coming together and doing what's right for our city and for the people that need the help there. I think everyone did a great job. I guess since Joel already did a executive session, I guess I'll add one for pending litigation, get an update. And the last thing is, I think the city's been doing a great job with our snow and potholes that, I mean, one day snow's there, the next day there's a pothole, and a day or two later, drive by and the pothole is filled. So I was very impressed. I'm sure the other people were like, why aren't you guys filling them 2 seconds after they occur? But
Yep.
I think they're being done in a timely fashion, so thank you, Ops Department. All right, could I have a motion to go into executive session for purchase or sale of property?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Rox, please call the roll.
Ken,
Yes.
Dr. Cordis,
Yes.
Molly,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Dan.
Yes.
And could I have a motion to go into executive session for pending litigation?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Rox, please call the roll.
Ken,
Yes.
Dr. Cordis,
Yes.
Molly,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Dan.
Yes.
The motion to come out of executive session for purchase or sale of property and pending litigation.
So moved.
Motion.
I said it first.
Rox, please call the roll.
Ken,
Yes.
Dr. Cordis,
Yes.
Molly,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Dan.
Yes.
All right, moving on. Oh, no action taken. Item L, executive session, we had that. Approved payment of bills and financial reports. In the absence of any objections or corrections, payment of bills and financial reports shall stand approved. They stand approved. Item N, adjournment. Motion?
Motion.
Second.
Rox, please call the roll.
Ken,
Yes.
Dr. Cordis,
Yes.
Molly,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Dan.
Yes.
We are